Washington correspondent for the Australian newspaper is our mate Adam Creighton. Adam, it has been a massive day. You've had a little time to sink it in, see some of the reaction and hear some of the inside stories. So after a few hours, what's your take at the end of today in Australia?
Well, look, one of the first points that springs to mind for me is just how incredibly secret this was kept for about 6 months, and the media was completely wrong-footed on this. Everyone was talking about how the US was going to be pulling back from the rest of the world because of the Afghanistan withdrawal, and that was bad for Australia, it was bad for democracies. But on the contrary, the opposite was happening. The US is actually stepping forward, at least in terms of defending democracies in the Indo-Pacific region. So I think that's a really important point, that everyone was quite wrong about the US general retreat from the world. But secondly, look, it's a good thing for Australia, of course. Makes sense. It strengthens us in the region. But just as Annalise just said, I mean, the government's going to take 18 months just to work out how to get these submarines, and then possibly another 10 years to even get the first one. So there could certainly be some sort of military confrontation in the next 10 years. I mean, of course, let's hope that doesn't happen, but there could be. So one really has to wonder what the plan is for the next 10 years too, for the defence of Australia and the region.
What are you hearing from the American side of things that we know? Obviously, the only other country that they've shared this technology with was a long time ago, and the UK. The decision to bring Australia into that, I know it was a process, well, a couple of years in the making, and obviously what we've heard about today, and as you suggested, a long time into the future as well.
Well, look, I think that kind of goes somewhat to my earlier point, that there were concerns actually that the relationship was fraying somewhat. I mean, there was the fact that Biden never called Morrison for 3 weeks after the withdrawal, which some people made something of, including myself. And the fact that he clearly forgets the Prime Minister's name too is not a particularly strong signal of a strong relationship there. But nevertheless, it's clear from this agreement that the US trusts Australia very, very greatly, at least the people who are making the decisions behind the scenes. So I think it's a real tribute to Australia, and I think it really elevates Australia above Canada, if you like, in the global pecking order of defence capabilities. They must be wondering why they were excluded. I mean, Canada has a bigger population than Australia. You could argue it's just as geopolitically relevant to this consideration, but it was left out. So I think Australia's been promoted from deputy sheriff, if you like, to full-on sheriff now, to refer to George Bush's words.
Yeah, and also we know now that the Quad will be meeting, and this is the thing too, is that in the past 12 months, to see what has been brought to the fore, new relationships. It's not just ANZUS, which is great, but 75 years old. It's not just Five Eyes, which is great, but it's a little while older. The Quad meaning that, of course, Japan, India, Australia, the United States, all working together, and now this new relationship. There really is the beginnings of a generational change in the role that Australia plays, that we're not just dragged along to a G7 in terms of the defence world. We're in the front row now.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's right. I think the world's changing from that Cold War mentality where everything really revolved around Russia and Europe. I mean, I think you're going to see NATO basically decline in importance in coming years, because that was a structure built certainly around containing Russia, but Russia is much less relevant now. I think the Quad is going to increase in importance. And Australia, because of our location in the world and also because of our extraordinary resources, takes on extraordinary geopolitical relevance. And I think that is what the Quad reflects. And I think also this new agreement as well. I mean, increasingly it's going to be about containing China, and that's why you're seeing these alignments. I mean, it's just as a footnote, it's sad to see New Zealand kind of resist joining kind of efforts like this and seemingly spurning our nuclear submarines. I mean, it's an extraordinary statement to come out and say.
Well, while they are sitting inside that Five Eyes
for all intents and purposes, they're definitely not in ANZUS. Yes, look, I mean, they're well and truly the fifth eye. I mean, I don't think they're even a worthy eye, actually, frankly. I think there's a two-tier eye system now, clearly. There's three, and then there's the other two.
Yeah, correct. All right. Now, also always to note, there's always a lot of other things to do in relationships. And, of course, we know that Boris Johnson and Joe Biden have said that they want bigger global arrangements when it comes to climate change. So, obviously, these tighter relationships, whether that's going to help pull us towards certain decisions that they want us to make, we wait, we see, but you're going to be in the front row, because that building behind you is where our Prime Minister heads in the next couple of weeks.
Indeed. Yes, that's right, Paul. The climate change decision recently, the US, to support Europe and Canada in banning public support for coal-fired power stations was, somewhat embarrassing for Australia, especially coming, as you say, just a week before the Prime Minister's going to arrive. I mean, Australia was opposed to this motion at the OECD, but it seems like it will probably get up with all of that support. And ultimately, it's going to affect the demand for coal long term, which of course is a damaging thing for Australia. You could argue. I mean, it's one of our largest exports. So the climate change area is going to be the biggest area of dispute between Scott Morrison and Joe Biden during the next couple of weeks, for sure.